right. So what you got me on here for? What are we going for?
Well, obviously we're going to talk about some competitions in bodybuilding, as I'm sure you could have guessed. So we are going to pose a question, since you now have been competing and coaching for what year did you first start competing? 2017?
Gosh. Yes.
2017? Okay, cool. So for
about 4
years now. All right.
Yeah.
So you've been competing for 4 years and you've put some winning competitors on stage yourself as a coach, which is awesome. So main question we're going to start out with is how do you build a winning physique? Not just one that's coming up there and actually,
just go up there to go up there.
But what sets the first place winners overall apart from the rest of the field?
In general, it's going to be conditioning.
Yeah.
If you're going to be competing, one of the biggest things that you need to know is that it's not just beach ready. You need to look better than just beach ready, which everyone has their mindset on, right? And they always think that I might not have to dig that hard to get conditioned on stage. And, maybe you're one of those genetic freaks where you don't have to, but everyone has to dig a little bit to get good conditioning on stage. And for that to happen, you just need to have adequate time. And I think one of the easiest things to do is just give yourself more time than you think. That way it's like, if I have an indeterminate date, then I can, go for a goal. And it's like, if I'm not ready, I'm not ready.
Right.
And if you can give yourself more time, that's going to be the best, tool in your tool belt is just time, consistency, doing it over and over again. Yeah, seriously.
Cool. I think a lot of people do fall into that trap of, I want to compete, I want to step on stage, let's set a show date, and they aren't giving themselves enough time. And I think some people really overestimate their capabilities of dropping weight. What they need to. I've been there in the past before. Now this is like my first prep where I've really I can honestly say, in my past preps, I never dug deep. This is the first time I've ever really
challenged yourself.
Really dug deep. So I think you're right.
And everyone has to dig to a point, right? It's just some people can eat a little bit more food.
Unless you're genetic freak over here, it doesn't really matter. Regular Joe Schmo, most people are going to have to really start digging deep.
Yes, and absolutely.
Using what I like to call the term "embrace the suck."
Embrace the suck.
Just part of it. So time, that's a big one.
Time's huge.
I think a lot of people do need to prioritize allowing themselves more time, having a more open-ended schedule for when they might want to compete, like a competition season instead of picking a show date.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very beneficial. So from a coaching standpoint, what's set in your athletes bar, whether it's Emma or anybody else that you've competed for more than one show, when they have gone from, I don't know, placing middle of the pack, bottom half to winning, what set them apart between those 2 appearances or 3 appearances, whatever it was? What changes were made that allowed them to really make that jump?
You could maybe say that there could be some changes in peaking and just how you can approach peak week. You can make minor manipulations, be like, all right, your body didn't respond how it could have, possibly during, certain protocols. Maybe we could have peaked you better. But in general, I think especially if you have time between shows, depending on the amount of time, like if you have 6 months to 8 months, you might be able to go to pretty good maintenance to caloric surplus and get some fullness back to your physique before dieting. And I think there's benefit to bringing fullness back and then dieting. And, if you have someone that has 4 or 6 weeks in between, the only thing that I think you might be able to do is peak better and maybe feed into it or feed deeper, depending on if you weren't conditioned enough. If you weren't conditioned enough, you can bring better conditioning just with time. But say if I don't know, if you needed fullness in your physique and someone could have been peaked better, well, maybe you can start eating up just a little bit and then start, tapering food up or down, cardio up or down, depending on what your look is like, to see if you can play around with a better look. Now, if that's the only amount of time that you have, that's what you got. But if someone has enough time to where that we're like, all right, I can maybe even like go into a slight surplus and build some muscle in between shows, that's kind of a different circumstance. But those are where my two thoughts lie.
Right. Okay. Cool. So when you're coming into peak week and you say, the difference might have been made between in this peak week from winning and losing, placing third, placing first. What kind of adjustments peak week wise are we talking that were made to kind of enhance these competitors' performance?
I mean, normally it's going to be food. It's going to be food and cardio for the most part. Maybe we change supplements just a little bit, but nothing crazy. When it comes to cardio, if someone is like a bodybuilder or maybe even a bikini girl and like the look of your legs matters more, you might need to taper cardio down a little bit to see if you can let your legs rest, bring back some life. That way, like, if you ever on prep and you just feel that dead leg feeling, like just, it feels like death moving your legs. If you can have that feeling gone by the time you're approaching, peaking for a show, that could probably mean that the look of your legs is going to be a little bit better as well. As far as like food, carbohydrates is normally going to be the main variable that you mess with. But I do think fats absolutely play a role. So let's say if you've tried to peak someone on like super high carbs or whatever, and it just felt like the carbs didn't stick or whatever, you could maybe say that adding fats in to peak week in certain times of peak week, you might be able to improve intramuscular triglycerides and try and like hold weight in the muscle a little bit more. And I think that can have some benefit. It's kind of like where we got just like the burger and fries thing for peaking, even though you can argue that there's better ways to approach that.
Right.
But in general, that's kind of like where you get it. And then salt. So normally salt, carbs, maybe fats. Water intake's normally not going to be something that you really adjust too much. I think if you cut water too early, I think you're going to look flat. You're not going to have the look that you want. Not going to be able to catch a pump as much. Depending on the person, though, I do think water intake can have some acute reactions. Meaning, like, if you have a carbohydrate dense meal and you have like 80 ounces of water, I think in that 2 hour, 3 hour period post meal or post consumption, you can maybe get like some blurriness in like your core or something like that, but nothing mind blowing. And I think that's why it's safe to play with that variable on show day for the most part. Like say, hey, your core is tight. Well, we don't need to push water. That's fine. You had the water intake the day before. You're going to be okay. But if you don't have enough water the day before, you can't make those calls. So normally, if you're going to play around with water, normally just show day, maybe a little bit the day or the day two before, but nothing crazy at all.
How much of a role does controlling your sodium intake on peak week?
I think it needs to be as consistent as possible. If you're not consistent with sodium, you could make the argument that your look won't be as consistent just because of salt, and your pumps in the gym might not be as solid, especially if you're in the position for trying to fill out a little bit peak week and you don't have sodium for workouts or anything like that. You might not fill out as efficiently. I don't know. And if you go flat, that's another reason why you could be flat. It's not just carbs. It could be the fact that you don't have salt in your diet.
Makes sense to me. So I see y'all got your trophy shelf going behind you there.
Yeah.
Saw that post on
that way? Yeah,
right there. Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Saw y'all post that on Instagram. That's looking good. We need to start getting y'all a bigger shelf. So you and
bigger shelf for sure.
So you and Emma can start really filling that up.
Yeah.
And she's looking to compete again in the spring.
In the spring, most likely.
Spring,
Yeah.
okay.
She's going to focus on school and life a little bit.
That's fair. Well, she brought a amazing physique to our show.
She had a solid physique for sure.
Obviously, I mean, you place. You win the overall. You obviously had a good look. So,
Oh yeah,
impressive for her. I'm proud of you guys. Proud of her. It's a lot of hard work.
yeah, she did a really good job. She went up against some tier 1 competition
Right,
too.
yeah.
She had some good competitors in her
Yeah, I would
classes.
love to actually have her on one day. Get some
Yeah.
bikini competition talk going in here. But yeah, so obviously built some good looking physiques yourself, and helped put some other people through some shows. What's your favorite part of doing it?
I think I like seeing changes the most.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the off season's fun. Off season's where you lay the foundation. It's where you build what you have. But there's just something about going into prep and seeing changes, whether it's, certain ways that you look or just the way that you like challenge yourself through prep. I think it's nice to be able to just see how you progress, and the fact that you can like kind of like have that sculpture thing. What would Arnold say? Like whenever you start chipping away at a sculpture, is kind of like how prep is like. And whenever you can see what you've built on your sculpture in the off season, it's kind of nice to just see it chisel away and be like, all right, this is what I got. Is it better than last time? And as long as it's better than last time, you're doing yourself a favor. If you aren't better than last time, maybe you need to change how you did your off season.
All right. So speaking of off season here,
Yeah.
we've talked about kind of prep and getting close to competition time, things that set those competitors and athletes apart during that time. What sets them apart during the time that you could arguably say is the most important time, the off season?
What sets an athlete apart in the off season is how consistent can you be in the off season.
I am glad you said that. That's good. Consistency.
It's easy to go through the motions, especially in the off season when you don't see the day-to-day changes like you do in prep. And it's also a little reverse psychology, because you just come out of prep when you're really conditioned and you're like, well, my look's about to change. How am I going to handle that change? Am I just going to go through the motions and know that like I could maybe coast and keep what I have, or are you going to just, work hard to progress? And if you can have the consistency in the off season like you do in prep, that's going to be what makes your physique a lot different for the most part. You can make an argument that you need to have structured programming, food, training, supplements, everything in a line. But if you don't have the consistency behind it, you're not going to see those changes.
Right. So yeah, that was bringing me into the next point, like how we get very data driven during prep, right? Like,
yeah,
tracking weight, body fat percentage, macros,
so many numbers.
Everything is just extremely data driven. We're looking at every single number possible in order to optimize our chances for success. Yeah. Do you think it is worthwhile and in athletes' best interest to stay in that same data driven mindset in the off season? Or do you think that could wear on somebody too much?
I think it can go either way. If you're someone that like lives and dies by numbers, and that consistency of tracking, whether it be food, training, if that's just part of your regimen and that's what keeps you sane, go for it. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And that's going to be better. If you track your numbers, that's whether it's food or training, you're going to be able to monitor progress a lot easier than if you weren't. But from a psychological standpoint, if you need that break from numbers, absolutely go ahead and take that break. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. For at least for the short term, you should be able to have some sort of gauge, like top sets of exercises just mentally checked away somewhere, or, what's like, sometimes I'll just go through a day and I think of what's my protein intake. Because in the off season, that's the main thing, right? As long as you're in a caloric surplus and you're hitting your protein, that's the biggest thing. You can kind of make some arguments for some other things that are like filler material, but for the most part, especially if you're a guy and you're bulking, now bikini competitor and some other variables, you could say doesn't need to push it as hard. But in general, if you're going to track your numbers, you're going to see progress a little bit quicker, and it's going to be easier to make adjustments. But from a psychological standpoint, if you need that break, you need that break.
Right. Okay. I mean, it makes sense. Because I've been in off seasons where I'm just like, I don't even want to think about numbers. Mm-hmm. I want to just eat. I want to get big, and that's it. And I think you see some refreshment there. You see some success doing that. But like you said, short term, keep that, maybe just to give you a little bit of a mental reprieve, and then really dive back into. There's a reason we track progress and things like that. And I think having a coach too, in order to keep you balanced and keep you in check, is really important.
Absolutely.
Having somebody to that objective point of view to turn to, even in the off season, because like this last off season for me, it was one where I didn't want to look at numbers. The only thing I looked at was my weight.
Yeah.
I wanted to hit that 200-pound mark. I hit that, got up to 207. It was great. And then I got into what I think a lot of people struggle with this as well. So it could be pretty applicable to everybody listening. I had a lot of weight to lose and might have really underestimated the time I needed to drop that weight, which circles back to what you're talking about earlier, time. So this really unstructured off season that I had, where I was just hammering away food. Had like a top set of like how much volume I wanted to get per muscle group per week. That was really kind of all I was tracking. Great. I put on a ton of weight, but it might have been like, now I got to the point where like prep's going to suck. Like I got a long way to lose. The caloric deficit has been in play since March, I guess, and we're in July. So I think people need to, like you said, it circles back to giving yourself enough time. Having that unstructured off season can be great. It's in a short amount of time, but having a coach there to monitor your progress and
just someone to tell you yes and no is nice.
Yes, it is.
That way you don't have to.
Even, someone like you and I, like, we know what we're doing, like we're very educated on the topic, things like that. Doesn't matter what you know. You need that objective point of view.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I think it's always crucial to have that somebody in your corner. Like, maybe you should go a couple weeks and maybe
you're being quite fat.
Come back down to maintenance. Let's do a little bit of a body recomp somewhere. So that being said, it circles back to time.
And especially if you're someone that has struggled with conditioning on stage, getting even fluffier in the off season can be difficult. Like for me, the initial drop's not hard. I'd say bringing good conditioning is hard, but like the first initial drop is actually pretty relatively easy for me. And for some people, even that initial drop is hard for them. But I also know like the formula for myself really well. And if you don't know the formula for your success to get good conditioning, you might need to give yourself more time and not get as sloppy in the off season.
Right. So just, it's sometimes it's all about test running, figuring out what's going to work, what's not. And again, it takes time to do that. You need to give yourself time to test things out. I've learned a lot in my preps in the past, what works, what doesn't, which is why people improve over time. Usually very rarely do you see people like start out first show, like coming out hot, win, and then just regress in like over time. Usually for the most part, I mean, you probably have some rare occasions you do see that, but for the most part,
I've seen it, but
it happens, but for the most part, people are making steady improvements over time.
Yes.
It's just because they're figuring things out, figuring their body out, what works for them, what calorie range they need to be in to lose weight. I mean, most people don't have access to like really good, accurate, total daily energy expenditure testing or anything like that, or BMR testing. Like you might be able to go to your local gym or nutrition shop and get on the what's it called, the handheld.
I know an Omron, I think it's what it is.
The ones you stand on and have the handles too.
An InBody.
InBody, the InBody machine. You might be able to get on the InBody machine, which those are high dollar pieces of
They're
equipment,
okay.
but
They're okay. They're cool.
BIA, I can chug a gallon of water and that can change.
Oh yeah.
Or start a big glass of water and that can change immediately.
You can skew the numbers in your favor really well too.
Yeah.
Be like, if I want to go like sweat, work out, pee, and then go get on the scale,
Exactly.
oh yeah, I'll get shredded for that scale.
Exactly. So for those people that don't have like access to serious metabolic equipment, a ventilatory hood and metabolic testing in a nutrition lab or anything like that,
Yeah.
It'll just take time to determine like, okay, this is how many calories I need to be at for maintenance.
Yeah.
Now I know like I can go, this is where I need to go to above, below, based on how much time you have.
Yeah.
So,
You're gonna have to kind of do some trial and error. And another one is like keeping track of your activity.
mhm.
Like if someone moves 15,000 steps a day, they're gonna be able to eat more than someone that moves 5,000 steps a day. So that's another variable too. Not everyone wears a fitness tracker or anything like that, but it's also something to like keep in your mind when you're tracking.
Yeah. So I think because a lot of people don't think about, their NEAT, whenever they're just, they're that non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Great. I go do an hour a day of cardio on prep. Yeah. I get my sweat in and then I go sit at my office job for the next 6, 7, 8 hours, whatever it is.
Yeah. Killed my workout, but I might have moved 2,000 steps today, maybe.
Exactly. So then, like you said, wearing some kind of like fitness tracker, monitor your steps is a big one. Right now, my goal for minimum daily steps on prep is 15,000. I like to get closer to 20, but yeah, so just a lot of variables come into play kind of to really build a successful and winning a winning physique on stage. If you had to pick, this might be a tough question, but I'm going to ask it to you anyways.
Okay.
There's a lot of variables that go into choosing a winning physique or bringing a winning physique to stage. Pick your top 3 most important that you really hammer home and focus on with your clients.
When it comes to bringing the best physique possible?
Sure, yeah.
As far as like variables or prep, like, okay.
Whatever.
I mean, number 1 is food.
Okay.
If your food sucks, you're not going to look good.
Right.
Number 2, I'm actually going to put training before cardio.
Okay.
If you don't let training fuel your prep, then you've forgotten what brought your physique to where it's at. So if you want to see your physique wilt, sure, pound out your cardio and train awful in the gym and you're going to see your physique wilt. And it's like, sure, you'll get lean, but like you'll lose everything you have. So I'm going to say food and then training and then cardio. And you manipulate cardio based on how your body responds to the training and food. Those are going to be the 3 that I say.
Okay. I can dig it. So coming into food, when I'm on prep, most people will go by macro plans. Their coach gives them, all right, you're hitting X amount of protein or X amount of grams of protein, carbs, fats, and a fiber goal usually. Can I just throw in a Snickers bar and make that fit into my macros on prep and be okay if I somehow try to make it work?
I mean, I think it depends.
Yeah.
I think digestion becomes a huge variable. Like, I'm not going to say that you can't have the Snickers bar, but then you start thinking, if you want to be like religious about prep, could there be a better option? Like if you're someone that's already low on calories and you have a Snickers bar, you're going to hate your life because you're going to be hungry for the calories that you could have had on like a salad. So I think in that part of prep, no, you're not going to be able to have a Snickers. If you're truly dieting and you're digging to bring good conditioning, you're not going to be able to make room for that Snickers bar. But if you're like, I don't know, someone starting prep and you're like at the beginning, you're kind of coasting a little bit, you might be able to throw in a Snickers bar every once in a while. But the next variable for me to consider is digestion. If your belly gets bloated every time you have a Snickers bar, don't have a Snickers bar. especially if you're a category where bloating can become an issue, which is honestly pretty much anyone that gets on stage,
Right.
but like,
Yeah.
especially like bikini competitors, it's like every girl on the planet thinks they get bloated in response to every meal. So,
Right. Yeah.
and some of that can be just like hormonal play. Some have birth control. Some have sleep history. There's just a bunch of variables that could play in someone like a bikini competitor. And if they feel bloated, you need to pay attention to that more. Like Emma has a super sensitive stomach. If you give her crap food, you're gonna have a crap belly, and it's not gonna, like, she gets bloated pretty quick. She exaggerates it from time to time, but it's there.
I'm sure most people do. Like, they think they're incredibly bloated, and you look at them like, are you really?
Yes, it's like, you ain't bloated, but
Come on now.
maybe a little bit. Let's see if you even hold it in a pose.
Mhm.
Then I'd say the next division might be like open bodybuilders. If you have a hard time and you're like pushing a bunch of food in the off season and you have a hard time digesting food as it is, you might want to watch where your food sources come from. That way you can hold your stomach tight. Don't want to have a bubble gut. Nothing fun with that.
It's true. That is very true. So talking about these different categories, you mentioned open, mentioned bikini. Outside of men's physique, because you compete in it, and outside of bikini, because your girlfriend competes in it, what is your favorite category to observe as a viewer when you're at a competition?
I mean, I would probably say open bodybuilders, mainly because they've taken their physique somewhere where my body has not been, right? And there's just a frame of respect for that, to be like, they've pushed their body and trained so hard to look the way they do. And it's like, I'm nowhere near that big. So it's like, I look at it in awe and I'm like, wow, like that's kind of where I go, is open bodybuilders. But from a general standpoint, you could try and say that classic physique has the best look. So, I mean, those two categories for sure.
Okay.
But
it comes down to personal preference on a lot of people.
Yeah,
really
I think
I really love the classic look too, but I also I have so much like awe and respect for the top echelon of open competitors too. So
open competitors, yeah, and a lot of those physiques, like sometimes a men's physique competitor, you can create a good one in like a year.
Yeah, right.
An open bodybuilder, you have to take
some
time
and dedication, years of it. Yeah. Okay, cool. I wanted your perspective on that. Mine personally, I really enjoy watching women's fitness. Because of just like
way different.
Yeah, the duality of they've got to come and bring a stage ready physique, and then
they've got to be able to perform.
Yeah, then they have to go do this whole routine. It's like I have a hard enough time like bringing the right physique to stage, much less like building in this whole other routine.
And I don't know how you stay so mobile. Like some of these girls are going up there and like, my IT bands are stretched out the wazoo because I got no body fat.
Yeah, no shot. Yeah. I just always get very, very impressed anytime I see any fitness competitors. I don't know. I like having that fitness aspect.
It is cool.
It's enjoyable. Speaking of fitness, you've been watching any of the CrossFit games today?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
I mean, I'm not I'm not against CrossFit. It's just not on the top of my to-do list to watch CrossFit.
The only reason I watch it and keep tabs is because of Megan, but it is what it is.
I mean, it's impressive still. I respect CrossFit. I do.
I could never do it.
I won't do it, but I respect it.
So, just because we're talking about it, why? How do these CrossFitters sometimes, not all of them, some of them don't look like this. Some CrossFit competitors, I look at them like, I could put you in a classic or like a men's physique or a classic competition, and you could like do well. If I gave you a proper prep. How are they managing that if training, not training, sport specific training, what you train for what you want to do?
Yes.
How they managing?
I don't know. I think some are hybrid trainers to where they might do like some, I guess, non-functional like bodybuilder workouts, I guess you could call them, or just like a regular gym workout rather than like a CrossFit day.
Yeah.
Some do that, like and do hybrid training kind of like that to where they do a little bit of both. And I think those physiques tend to stick out.
Yeah. Megan just finished like her coach called it a bodybuilding cycle. Which I mean, it's like a baby
functional
bodybuilding. Yeah. So like I know that that does exist in their realm too.
Because hypertrophy matters. A stronger muscle
sure does. The bigger muscle is a stronger muscle for the most part, and unless you're coming as with all other factors in play, talk about neurological stimuli and everything like that.
Yeah, neurological output matters, and that's like hugely genetic too sometimes. But
yes, it is. Those motor neurons have different innervation ratios and things like that you can train, but a lot of times it's genetically predetermined. And guess what? If you didn't pick your parents right, sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why my bench press sucks. Or at least that's what I'm gonna say till I die. Probably.
That's fine. Yeah. You just say like, I got it from my dad. It's fine. Put it on him.
My bench press sucks.
That's okay. We can't be good at everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's all I have for you today.
Okay.
We'll wrap it up, keep it nice and short and sweet.